This concludes our squabbing hunt of the night. Squabbing hunter, attack.
When Peter Marr visited Kennedy Space Center in Florida, he spotted this awesome display of invention lurking in a super hot furnace and had to film it.
Now these have been in there at 2200 degrees for hours, so you'll see they're blazing hot.
Hold on, that's 1200 degrees Celsius. Don't touch it! Phew, he's okay. So what are these magic cubes?
It's a thermal tile from the space shuttle. The space shuttle enters the atmosphere, and due to frictional forces, there's a lot of heating that occurs, and you don't want that heat to be transferred into the shuttle. And so you layer it in these thermal tiles. They get heated, but they don't transfer that heat.
So how do the tiles withstand the immense heat of re-entry?
It's because it can retain that heat right inside the core of that cube. That's because of two reasons.
First, they're made of pure silica fibers, and these fibers themselves are poor thermal conductors. Not only that, they're very thin. And if you're going to conduct thermally, you have to actually have physical contact.
The second reason is by volume, this cube is 94% air. Air, and in fact any gas, really poor conductors of heat. Now this is because heat conduction relies on the knocking together of particles. In a gas, all the particles are really far apart, and so they can't really have much of a knock-on effect on one another.
But the tile is still glowing red hot. How can he pick it up?
If you look at the cube, you'll notice how the edges were darker than the faces, and that's an indication of where it's cooler and hotter.
On the outside edges, there's the convective transfer of heat away from the cube. Meanwhile, inside the cube, it's still relying on conductive transfer, which is really slow.
So that makes the corners cool enough to touch, giving us one hot video. Meet Brandon, who's about to prove that mind over matter isn't just a saying.
It's cool to see things that mess with your mind.
This high-tech invention is a virtual reality headset called Oculus Rift, and it's about to make Brandon believe he's riding a roller coaster in his living room. Whoa.
What Brandon is seeing is a roller coaster ride, and the images being delivered to him through this ocular rift are so real that it's causing his body to shift in response to that.
But why does Brandon's make-believe world seem so genuine?
It's manipulating aspects of our vision that normal glasses don't. Humans have stereoscopic binocular vision, which means that because our two eyes are separated, each eye is seeing the same image, but from a slightly different perspective.
The Oculus Rift supplies pictures that are slightly off from each other to each eye. And so your brain puts them together to make a 3D image the same way it does in real life. His body is telling him a very different thing than what he sees. And that's why he gets so disoriented. He's falling over and he can't stand up straight.
So Brandon had no chance of remaining upright while wearing this incredible invention. Oops. So far our scientists have been in awe of our amazing inventions. But as we enter the top 10, we discover being a mother of invention isn't all about building things. Don't try this one at home. We're in the garage with a mother of inventive destruction, mechanic Mike Stanek.
Spark plug, hammer, vice, spark plug, hammer, smash spark plug, get ceramic, throw a glass.
Well, that was unexpected.
The window literally shatters. It's really astonishing.
It just doesn't make any sense. It's amazing how quickly and easily it destroys that window. What's going on?
Scientists, explain!
The key for shattering the glass in the car window is that the glass has actually been treated in order to make it safer for you. It's what we call tempered glass. Instead of forming these long daggers, it actually just crumbles up into tiny pieces when it's compromised.
The way this glass is treated is it's first heated to a very high temperature, then it's rapidly cooled down. And what this does is create two layers. You have the outside layer where everything is in compression, the inside layer is more in tension. The whole system is overall balanced. It actually creates a very strong system.
To prove how strong the glass is, Mike tries the same trick with a pebble and a nut. But if it's so strong, what's going on with the ceramic?
The difference here isn't weight or size of the object, it's really how sharp it is and how much pressure you can get. Pressure is equivalent to a force over an area, so if you have a very small area, you're actually going to get a very high force. And with the ceramic piece, it's got a very tiny area, so when it hits the glass, it applies a lot more pressure to the glass than the blunt object would.
So it's the internal forces within the glass that keep it so strong. But it's a lot like a house of cards. If you destroy the tension in one part of the window, the whole panel will fail.
But what about that mess, Mike?
Vacuum.
Most of these video clips, you see people destroying things. You don't always see the cleanup. It's nice to see someone take responsibility.
And remember, broken glass can be dangerous. You have been warned. So far, our mothers of invention have intrigued us with a hovering platform, used science to hunt scorpions, and mastered a tall bike. But coming up, we're firing on all cylinders as we hurdle up the countdown. You have been warned.
It needs to be so. There's a problem-solving skill here as well as just A plus B equals C.
So why have parrots like Pepper evolved to be so intelligent?
Some of the same factors that have caused primates to evolve intelligence have caused parrots to evolve intelligence. They're also very long-lived and live in complex social and ecological environments.
In the wild, they need to discern where they are, what kind of food might be in that place, have there ever been any risks or predators. They also need to be able to detect one bird from another. So they've got a level of detailed understanding that is really very impressive.
There you go. A bright bird with an ingenious invention equals an internet smash. Now watch this.
Just looks really weird.
Showcasing a wonder material that can cope just about anything, this viral video by Florida inventor Mark Shaw notched up 7 million views in just a few months.
What an amazing substance. You put this on any material and suddenly it repels water like magic.
Magic? I don't think so. Scientists?
The reason that this coating is so good at repelling water is because it uses nanotechnology. Nanotechnology is where you have particles that are in the region of a billionth of a metre across.
Human hair is about 50,000 nanometers wide. So we're talking within the kind of 50,000th of a human hair width.
That's really, really, really small. But how do these particles make this happen?
When you coat the surface of something with these nanoparticles, you're making a very bumpy, craggy surface which has got a very, very high surface area. And this is very important because what these nanoparticles are made out of is silica. Silica is naturally hydrophobic. That means it doesn't like contact with water. So when you put a droplet of water onto this surface, for it to spread out means that it has to make contact with a lot of silica. And it would rather just stay wrapped up in a ball than it would contact the surface.
Now there's only 3% of the entire surface area of that droplet in contact with the material. Now because it's not making much of an interaction, it really easily rolls off.
So a water-hating material and a huge surface area makes one awesome invention.
If you ever thought that you were a dog person, you're wrong. This is a dog person.
No, she doesn't just love puppies. This lady has sprouted a tail.
It's a wonderfully Japanese invention. It's clever, but it's also pointless.
Invented by Shota Ishwatari, these tails seem to go into overdrive when presented with a pancake.
Women enjoy their sweets. What can I say?
Have they turned dog, or is something else going on?
The idea behind the tail is it's basically tapping into the electrical impulses within your body. So it's monitoring your heart rate.
You have an electric signal coming from the cells in your heart, which makes the heart beat. So usually our heartbeat under normal conditions is around 60 to 80 per minute. But when we get really excited, it accelerates.
The faster your heart beats, the faster your tail is going to wag.
Tailey's monitor is worn around the waist, but that's not where the heart is.
You can obviously put the tail of the upper end in chest, but that's not where a tail belongs. So they have to sort of get over the fact that between where the heart impulses are and where the tail is, there's a whole lot of other information and a lot of noise going on. So they need to filter out all that other noise to detect the heart part. So that's part of the genius behind the software in this, actually.
I'm not sure I would want one, because if somebody is setting my heart racing, they don't need to know that just now. I'll tell them later.
Our next mother of invention is getting hot in the Sahara Desert. Yes, German designer Markus Kaiser has built a solar-powered sculpting device that enables him to make art from sand.
He's nowhere near standard electricity supply, and yet he's working a very high-tech piece of kit just by using the sun and by using sand.
I love how you could see the sand boiling.
But our experts aren't just after his fancy bowl, they spy science.
What he's using is something called a Fresnel lens to focus all the solar energy into a very small area.
The sun has an intensity of about 1,000 watts per square meter. Now his lens happens to be 1 square meter, and he focuses all that energy down to the area of about a dime, which produces temperatures in the order of 1,600 degrees Celsius or up to 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
Now if you look at the grains of sand, you've got lots of different grains which are touching on the edges but not physically joined together.
Now by melting this down, what we're doing is eliminating all the little gaps and pockets of air, slightly changing their shape so that they can fit into each other better. It's forming this fused quartz, a kind of glassy substance.
Because sand is such a high melting point, as soon as the beam shifts away, the sand is frozen into the position it was when the beam was melting it.
But how does Marcus make his sandy sculptures three-dimensional?
He's programmed the machine to move in a certain pattern. Every time it's done a set of patterns, he lowers it one step.
The sand cools, and then he adds more sand and builds another layer until he's finally created what he's programmed.
And that's how he can make such really cool sculptures.
So far in our itinerary of innovation, we've seen a really tall bike, met a bird that can drive, and exploded tires. But as we enter the top 5, our mothers of invention take us out of this world.
Hi, I'm David, and this is my attempt to send a radio-controlled airplane into the edge of space using a weather balloon.
Big deal! The internet is full of videos of people sending things high into the atmosphere. But David notched up 700,000 hits and made it into our top 5 because rather than just letting it fall, he piloted his plane back down.
This is quite amazing. He sent his glider all the way up in space and he could still control it. That's a marvelous piece of engineering.
The plane is now 33 kilometers away. So how is David going to pull this off?
David is actually controlling his glider using radio waves. But if he has a standard radio wave antenna, he would need a lot of power to be able to control that glider.
So he has to fit signal boosters onto all his radio equipment. But what he does to increase the range is make them directional. So rather than the radio waves scattering all over the place, they're focused into a tight beam, which means they're able to go much further. But if you go off axis with it, you will lose the connection and of course lose control. So he's got his mate in the car, so when he releases the glider, they desperately drive along trying to track the glider underneath so they can stay in contact with it.
So by making his antennae directional, David can control his glider over 33 kilometers away.
I'm starting to pilot the plane and I glide for as long as I can, just to enjoy the scenery.
Despite a bit of a bumpy landing, David's flight is a hit with our experts.
He was able to control this glider and fly it down. So I think that this was a highly successful mission for him.
Meet Charles Greenwood. It may look